What are some of the steps that you take your clients through to help them? Casey, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I'm really looking forward to this chat because when we talked offline, you really specialize in helping people overcome their own issues and their own mental blocks. And for entrepreneurs, this is one of the biggest struggles. So I'm really looking forward to diving deep into all of that. But maybe before we do that, let's back up a little bit and start sort of like with your journey and how you got into this field.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to. I have an epiphany that I want to be able to tell you about a little later that involves a time when I felt like I was just going to burn my business to the ground, but I stepped outside this log home one day and looked up to the sky, and this epiphany came to me about, oh, you should do portrait photography. And I'm sitting there like, what? What does that have to do with anything?
Yeah.
And then how that just changed the trajectory of my entire plan. So I'm looking forward
I'm so excited.
to sharing that with you later. First, starting at the beginning, I would say I'll explain where I was with a 9-to-5 and how I jumped ship and went into my own business. So I was working for a lighting agency at the time, doing my 9-to-5 work. My background's in design and architecture, so that's the field that I was in. And I had started another business on the side. So I started a color consulting business on the side in Washington, D.C. Yes, very exciting. So I was working those both at the same time, and I could see that I wasn't really going anywhere in my 9-to-5. And I felt a little bit like I was being smoked out.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They just kept calling me in and talking about my performance and things like that. But to their credit, maybe I wasn't performing because I did have this other job on the side and I was doing some activities with it at the time, but I'd always put in more hours. I wasn't letting it interfere. Whatever the case may be, I decided to jump ship on the 9-to-5 because I thought if I can spend more hours with my part-time business, then maybe I can do even better.
Yeah.
And I had already moved to DC and got an apartment there and was ready to go. So I had a color consulting business, which was helping people choose paint colors for their homes or office. And I had the idea to put my business model inside a paint store so that the customers that came in could get help for free, but then I could go into their homes and help them personally. So have that as the service that I provide.
Yeah.
So that was growing, really well, even before I decided to jump ship. And I added more hours to the paint store. And one day, the manager sat me down with this other person who'd been working there and said, hey, by the way, this other person has been doing what you do, kind of informally behind the scenes. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, that's not a good vibe.
And I thought, and she's an employee there, but I'm a subcontractor. So I just was thinking, oh my gosh, I'm doomed here. But he said, I think there's enough clients, to go around. I don't think it's going to be a problem. And I thought, okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is a big city. He probably has a point there. Until that wasn't true. The customers, my clientele just went way down. So, I was at a point where it's like, what am I going to do? Do I just drop this business? Do I pick up and go somewhere else? I've already established, my name here. So instead of letting that get me down, I went out to the suburbs. I kept that paint store and went out to a suburb and worked in another paint store in the same capacity, just on a different day. And then other paint stores around the area started hearing what I was doing and wanted me to come in and work there.
Oh, great.
Until there wasn't enough of me to go around. So I started training people to do what I was doing and putting them in different paint stores and having them learn, the process. And that was the exciting point where my business, I felt like we just woke up one day and suddenly I had 6 color consultants working for me.
Wow.
We were in 6 paint stores throughout Washington, D.C. and I had hit 6 figures. I didn't even realize it until I started looking at my numbers because we're just going and having fun and building this thing. So that was really fun. That's sort of the beginning. After that, then things, when you grow, I wasn't used to really managing people. And so is that something you've ever done before?
Oh, God, no. I have never had no, never. I'm like, it's definitely something that I think about a lot because as the business grows, like it's inevitable. And I like to consider myself a leader and one who, leans that way naturally. But I'm sure that when that opportunity comes, like I will have to take some sort of course or something because I feel wholly unprepared.
It is something to get used to for sure. And I think because mine came so quickly, I mean, I hired a consultant to help me, manage my business and
Yeah.
manage these, new employees. And we were doing great, but it was just getting to the point where I needed some time to myself, to do my own thing. And I actually went on a little vacation to visit a friend, and it was in the mountains. So outside of DC, beautiful mountains, the Shenandoah Mountains. And so I drove there. It wasn't long before I got outside the city before all of a sudden, these hills start forming and
Mm.
there's just green grass everywhere. And you can see off in the distance, more mountains. And these are different than, snow-capped mountains. It's like beautiful rolling hills. And, I'm just waiting for, Julie Andrews to come rising over the green grass and singing "The Hills Are Alive" or something. So it's this peace overcame me. And anytime I'd make that drive in the future, it's just so amazing. And you probably have something similar near.
Yeah, in California we have, well, they're a little bit golden right now because we don't always get enough rain, but it's been raining a lot, so soon it is going to be very similar, like just rolling hills. I relate a lot to what you're saying because I get the same sensation.
Yeah, so it's so nice. And that was nice for me, but it really emphasized the dichotomy between city life
Mm-hmm.
and country life.
Yes.
And it made me realize, all these things I'm experiencing in my business, things like, the other consultants calling in sick or not calling the right person, and then I don't know, and then I can't get a position filled,
Right.
or the management's upset about some dress code that somebody came in and wore, or we left some of our things out, or just anything like that. Any number of things that are just, constantly hitting me. And I was like, I think that I'm ready for a slower pace of life. And what I did was I ended up moving to the mountains and I left my color consulting job that I had created,
Yeah.
my business. And I really just left it to fend for itself because I just felt like, I have some other dreams of my own. This was really just meant to be a stepping stone to make myself a better designer, a better architect by
Yeah.
understanding color. So that's when I decided to make a move and I went back to school to get my master's degree in construction management. And then that's my whole next phase,
It's a lot. I worked in project management and construction is a huge part of the projects that we were building and I'd never done anything like that before. And it's a lot. Like I've seen, what is it? It's, I don't know if it's I think the CCMP has to do more with project management, but I don't know if that's specifically construction project management, but that book is like 8,000 pages and it's so much knowledge and information. So I'm sure it was a little bit overwhelming.
Yes, yes. Well, I was fascinated with the construction industry. And so I went back to school. I got my degree online, but I wanted to go then because I wanted to get my master's, but I wanted to do it before like my parents were aging. And so I wanted to do it, before they needed my help and that I could be there for them and just get that off my plate kind of thing. Just
Mm.
a milestone I wanted to reach. I was doing that, but halfway through that program, I was out to eat with a friend of mine at a Mexican restaurant. And I remember smelling something very distinct. I don't know, it kind of smelled like mole sauce or cardamom or something really distinct that reminded me of my grandmother. And I mentioned that to him, and she had already passed years ago. We left the Mexican restaurant and we were driving home, and I got a call from my sister, who also lives in San Francisco,
Oh,
by
no
the way.
way.
And she said, hey, Case, mom has collapsed. We don't know, what's going to happen. We've got, they're calling paramedics or something. So the backstory on that was she had just moved into a living facility that she'd been trying to get into for like 10 years
Oh.
because it was like a social life that she could finally have
Mhm.
for herself.
Yeah.
her best friend had been living there and was practically the mayor of the whole unit, you know?
I can see this. Yeah.
Yeah. And, but it's not just her best friend of 50 years.
Ugh, this is my dream. I think that's like the best thing ever is that like girls have really long-term girl best friends
Oh my
that they
God.
can. My friend and I talk about this all the time. Like, you know, we were very much like if we were not married by 40, we would enter a domestic partnership and just have a bunch of cats. So like, I'm so happy for your mom.
Right? I know. It was so exciting. We were really thrilled for her. And the numbers just aligned, and she and her significant other were able to move there. There had actually been this long wait list for like a year, but within 2 weeks she was able to move in, and she was able to sell her home really quickly too, well, their home, and move in. And so the antics already began. And I didn't mention, of this like 200, room facility, she happens to get in. The one room that's open is right next door to her best friend.
Stop. I would cry. My gosh, that's so beautiful. I'm going to tell my best friend about this because she's going to cry.
Yeah. Yeah. Let her listen to this.
Oh my God.
And when I say the antics were already beginning, my mom was stepping outside of her room because she had just had shoulder surgery, or was going to. I think she just had it, and she couldn't reach her back to get like her bra undone. And she goes to knock on her best friend's door to help her get it undone, like just out in the hallway,
Everything. Oh my gosh. My actual dream.
Yeah, so that's how it's happening. And so there was a Saturday night, like maybe 9 or 10 days after she moved in, and she and her best friend were putting away items and reminiscing about old times and just having what they both explained was just the best time, of their life. So the next day is when I got that call from
What
my
happened?
sister. So what happened was they were at the dining table for lunch, and my mom had just collapsed, I think, on the table or whatever. And they had taken her out to lie her down, and her breathing had slowed. She still had a pulse, but her breathing had slowed. They suspect it was a pulmonary embolism.
Mm.
But there's some technicalities in there about could they call 911? Were they allowed to, and all this? But they got paramedics there, and they couldn't really get her heart rate to increase. So they took her to the hospital, and she wasn't able to sustain that heart rate, and she passed away, and that's what they think happened.
Gosh.
Yeah. So we don't even know if it could have been preventable if she'd have been. Well, another irony was she had a doctor's appointment the next day on Monday.
Oh my
This was a
God.
Sunday. Yeah. So
So
maybe
sorry.
they could have found something like that, because those things can be preventable if you get them in time. But she didn't. And she was almost 81. So, it's to be expected, as you get up there in age. But I couldn't get there in time because she was in Colorado. I was in Virginia. And I was upset because she'd only been there for 10 days.
Of course.
The point of this is she'd only been able to live her dream for 10 days. That was the part that was really, really upsetting. And that stuck with me for months. Yeah. I went back and finished out my degree, and I was applying to get jobs and things in the construction industry, and quickly realized the pay that I was going to get to do like entry level work was the same that I could get doing even just color consulting, part time. And I was like, I don't know if I'm ready for this right now, and me applying for things, I just wasn't getting the work anyway. I wasn't getting, offers.
Yeah, it wasn't flowing.
So I was like, well, let me, find my passion and purpose doing my own thing then. And I'd hired, a lot of mentors to help me figure that out. And in the meantime, my mom and I were really close, and we talked all the time, and nothing was going to replace, her and that experience that we shared together. But it just stuck with me that it was so sad that she couldn't get, her dream
For long
up to fruition. And that's when I went into my next phase.
I was talking to somebody else the other day, and she had a very similar story. Her dad passed away, and she was like now is the time to really like pursue my dreams and to finally take the leap. And like, as unfortunate as it is to have to wait until something like that happens, it is the best catalyst sometimes.
It really is. Both of my parents have passed now. They passed within a year and a half of each other, but It's really life-changing to just, experience that. Because it had such a profound effect on me, I realized I don't want any other woman to have to go through that or to have to experience that, get to the end of their life, finally get their dream, and then die 10 days later.
Mm-hmm.
I had also found out that she had wanted to be an interior designer, in her adult life, but that never happened. And she raised us kids and she had different kinds of jobs, but not that. And it made me realize, if she had had someone like me, because what I do is visionary coaching now. That's what I decided to go into as a result. And I just thought if she had had someone like me that could help her in life and business and with these emotional blocks and things that keep us from moving forward, who knows? She could have gone on to pursue that dream. And
100%.
so, yeah, that's when I really had this mission to want to help women be able to get these ideas out of their head and put them out there, and not just put them out there, but create an impact in the world and do something that's really fulfilling to them.
Yep.
And, in their life and their business, and more than anything, just be able to get to the desires and those dreams that they have for their life and business.
I am incredibly passionate about that. I think our values really align there. Like, that's why I started the podcast. My business partner and I, we have like a tech platform that we're working on, which is very similar. Like, we really believe that, empowering people to live their dreams is the best work that we can do. And I love that all three of us have gone about it in a very completely different way, but along the same vein. And I'm fascinated because I've done a lot of work internally to try to make sure that I get myself to be in the best position possible to be as happy as possible. And I know some of the struggles, especially at the beginning when you enter this kind of journey, is like you don't even know what questions to ask yourself. You don't even know what your own self-imposed limitations are until you're confronted with them. So I'm curious to know, what are some of the steps that you take your clients through to help them start to dig deep and discover all of the things that are holding them back?
Yes. Why?
Yes.
Yeah. Why is one of the big questions. But so for my visionary coaching, which is what I decided, to go on and pursue, and started coaching women entrepreneurs specifically, I use what I call an ebb and flow framework. So the ebb is EBB. So that stands for the acronym for Epiphany, Blueprint, and Bridge. And I can explain more about that later, but the epiphany is actually the first stage. So I also have a background in psychology and crisis center management and volunteering. And with that, what I found is there are blocks, and this is one thing that I specialize in, is there's blocks that keep people from getting their desires in life and business, whether they want to be able to travel abroad or with loved ones, or they want to start some sort of retreat center, or, just write a book or whatever it is that they want to do for their business. They're not doing it, and why. So the epiphany stage is the first one, where I take my clients on a deep dive to find out what is going on in their subconscious, things that they're not aware of. And these have to do with their thoughts and their beliefs. And we just dive deep by asking, why did this happen? Or oftentimes it's, what's so bad about that, or what's so wrong with that? And that's a way that you can get really down very deep to bottom level beliefs. And it's really those bottom level beliefs that sit there and sit in our subconscious and are the things that we don't or won't face.
Yeah.
That are what is the most troubling. So what I do is go down and help them excavate that, help them uncover that. And I'm right there with them. And while people can do that on their own, it's nice when you can have someone else do it with you, because we've avoided this for decades, whatever that is down there. What makes you think you're going to just suddenly open the door and greet it now? So that's what I do, is hold their hand through that. And this is the most serious part of my program. The rest is like being in Wonderland. But once we do that, it's as if there's a statue, that's been erected in the middle of some traffic circle, and the statue is you're the entrepreneur, and you're just standing there in one place and you can't get anywhere. What we've done is we start to chisel away the outside, all the hard pieces. And all of that starts to crumble and fall off. And now you can move now and you can hop off of that platform. You're no longer in the traffic circle. You're free to move about the country.
Yeah.
And by doing that, what I discovered was we start to take different points in their life and start to connect the dots. They might have experienced maybe a sibling who always did better than them and they always felt like they weren't enough or something. And so we'd uncover that while the person that felt like they weren't enough, they were really incredible, but they always, the narrative in their mind was, hey, I'm not enough. And so in their adult life, when things don't work out, they just think, oh, well, I'm not enough. Nobody cares. No one's going to notice me. All these, we start to find, one by one, all these things that they're doing in their adult life that tie back to this one point where, their brother got all of the attention and got all of the, or sibling got all of the accolades for everything. So once they can see where the problem was or started and how it relates to where they are now, it's like the world just opens up to them. And, that becomes the epiphany. And what happens that they probably don't realize is that energetically, they're now open to receive things. Whereas before, you're this statue in concrete. You're not moving anywhere.
Yeah.
You're not moving forwards. Much of this is not even them moving forward to get what they want. It's the world and the things and stuff like that. It manifests, and that's how it happens. So they get to go through the epiphany. They start immediately from the first call manifesting things. And it's really incredible. And it's really incredible to hear some of the things that, my clients have gotten just after that first call.
Yeah.
So it's really powerful.
Honestly, it's truly one of the best things that you can do. And it's also the hardest thing that you can do. And which is why I always encourage people to do it, is because sometimes the hardest things end up being the best things. And the other thing too, is when you start to do this, you can start to realize it without coaching. You can start to be like, oh, like this, I can attribute now to this, because you have the tools necessary to be able to continue that growth.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. You can do these things on your own, and you can just ask yourself, what's so bad about this? What's so bad about this? So that you can find out that bottom level belief of what's so bad, and then start connecting the dots and finding ways that you can stand in your power. So you can absolutely do that.
You like open the can of worms, and then they're like, whoa, and then you help them navigate through it. And as they continue to grow and grow, it's a really like amazing snowball effect.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. It's a brief period of time where it's this really deep stuff, but imagine it's like detoxifying, you're just getting something out of your system, and then you feel so free and clear, and you become more confident, and you understand yourself better, and all of those things. So that's the epiphany of the first stage. And some of the things that my clients have received that came to them, I had one client who was an author and decided to write this book that she'd been wanting to basically her whole life. And she got it out within 2 weeks. She had pre-sold 50 books without having, a publisher or anyone with her. It had gotten rave reviews. She had all those copies sold and then more. And she was also working part-time down the street from her at a restaurant as a hostess. And she would come to our calls and she would say, Casey, you're never going to believe this. She said, but I received tips tonight and I've never received them. It's always the wait staff and everything, but now I'm receiving them. Each week she'd come to me, she'd have an envelope she'd pull out of her purse, and then she'd be like, oh, there's more. And she'd have money like flying, out of her purse, getting tipped with money in a non-tipping position.
Crazy.
Yes. So it was things like that all the time that would happen. And then another client who really wanted to start a podcast, but she was told by another mentor she couldn't do it and she wouldn't make money and all of this. And we opened her up and it's like, of course you can. And, found ways to do it that aligned with her, which is really important. And so she started it. And the next week she came back, she said, yeah, I started it and you're not going to believe this, but I'm booked 3 months out and I have a wait list of guests. She's like, I don't even know how they found me.
That's amazing.
So it's just things like that that are really unexplainable. So they get that, that start running,
Yeah.
and that can happen whether you do it on your own or otherwise. But I take them through the next step, which is the blueprint. So that's the B of the EBB. And that's where we look at like value and doing some planning. So we create that blueprint.
Yeah,
But it's the funnest. It's the funnest stage of all of them when I mentioned
for
when you
sure.
plan. Yeah.
What does that process look like exactly? Because I think this is also something that I imagine people would struggle with, because you're sort of like staring at a blank canvas a little bit and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
well, like, where do we start? How do we build? Like, what does that look like, you know?
Exactly. So the thing that I like is helping people that maybe have tried traditional ways and,
Mm.
methods, strategies, business strategies, and it's just still not working for them. So this is a way to step outside of those traditional ways and create things that work just, perfectly with them. So what I use is I have a Pinterest method that I use using visuals. And then I also have a therapeutic photo shoot method that I developed. So this is a place where we get to go in and see all the visual things, and we go into Pinterest and create buckets of visuals for their life. And then we create buckets of visuals for their business.
Mm.
And then we create buckets of visuals for a photo shoot. So, my role in all this is that I get to, help them weave this line that goes through everything. And that I call like their identity thread. So we
Mm.
want to make sure no matter what they're doing, that it's them.
Yep.
It's not some other traditional method. It's not someone else's, some other guru's way of doing things. I'm digging in to find out who they are, what works best for them, and creating new tools that will help them get that. So we get through those so that we can get a personal brand developed for them and get them a mood board and a brand board, so that when they're done and they've got a photo shoot, whether it's from selfies or a professional photo shoot, and I can explain that part of it later, but they can take all of that and have the confidence in themselves. They know who they are now, so they can stand much better. We've been working on emotional work throughout that whole time, their mindset, and making sure that
Mhm.
they've got a strong foundation built from the beginning. So if they fall and have challenges, they can get back up instead of just crumbling down for weeks,
Totally. Of
months, or years, right? I mean, have you been through stages like that where something's
course.
happened? You're like,
Well, I think like the thing is that growth is not linear. It's a roller coaster, and it's, sometimes you think you've dealt with something and then it comes back and you're like, okay, well, I guess I didn't deal with it fully or like the right way the first time. And, it's a constant work in progress, and so it's always something that we're having to confront and deal with. And I like to think about it almost as like you climb a mountain, and that's like the growth aspect, and then you hit the peak and you get to sit there and you get to enjoy the view for a while, and then something else comes up and you're like, shit, I got to keep trudging up the mountain to get to the next best view. And like, it's just, to me, almost like a little staircase. And that's sometimes a struggle, is people think like, oh, well, I've had my one epiphany, I'm good. And it's like, no, you'll keep having more and they'll just become a little bit more challenging and a little bit more challenging. But like, that's kind of the point.
yeah. No, that's a really great way to describe it, Maddie. That's exactly it. And, I can attest to this point in my life where you do keep running into challenges. And the beautiful part about it is that as you expand your capacity to grow and take on more things and take on that next level or that next challenge, then you do hit, more bumps, and they're bigger bumps, and you have to figure out, how you're going to get back up or get to that next level view. So that was really good.
But you're also
So
strong by that point too. So you're like, you're ready to handle that, Like, people say that they're like, God doesn't give you challenges that you can't handle. And whether you subscribe to God or universe or whatever, but that's just the truth. Like, you're always giving something that you absolutely can handle.
you're right. You're right. You can. And a lot of times it's just the thoughts that you're thinking. Sometimes you think, oh,
Yeah.
I can't. I can't do that. Like there's a lot that I've got for 2025 that's on my plate. And I'm like, it would probably be smart if I just took one thing off the table so I can do better at the other things. But it's like, why? Why not just figure out, a better way that I can do it, expand, my growth, and that I can do it. And I did. I figured out a way. So
yeah, thoughts for me are the hardest challenge. I feel like I'm always plagued by self-limiting thoughts, and I'm always having to like quiet them and be like, I hear you and I appreciate your opinion, but you have no business being a part of this conversation. But it's a struggle, like they always pop up, and it's hard sometimes to manage the noise, but that's part of the process.
It is. And there's different ways to deal with it. One that I've learned has helped a lot is sometimes just stopping and accepting it. It's like, okay, it's here. I see you, I feel you, I'm going to mourn you or whatever. And then it's like, okay, how long are we going to stay here before we decide, to get up and go? And other times it's like, it's like the toddler riding in the back seat and you're going to the grocery store and they don't want to be with you. And it's like, I know, but you got to go because I can't leave you at home by yourself and we need to eat. So what?
Yeah. True.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. But one really exciting concept, if it's okay to explain this mechanism, is the therapeutic photo shoot method.
Yes, I'm very intrigued by this.
Yeah, so I'll go back a little ways to that moment that I was telling you about, that I thought I was going to burn my business down and go outside and find out what's up. So after my mom had passed and I decided I wasn't going to work in the construction industry at that time, and I was looking for my passion and purpose, and I realized, I can do this. I can consult, women entrepreneurs. So I started doing that, and I had, a few under my belt and whatnot, but my income wasn't what, I wanted it to be or what I needed it to be. But I knew I was on this trajectory of something really, really cool. And I was like, I don't know what to do. I'm really, getting anxious here. Do I, go get a part-time job at, Starbucks and serve some coffee for a while? Or, do I continue this way? And I didn't want to have to work for somebody else at the time.
Right. Like neither of those things sound like good options.
Right. So sometimes you get to that point and you're like, am I going to burn this down? Or is there one more thing? You're like trying to find, it's like digging through these files. Is there one more thing I can do?
Yes.
That's when I took myself outside and decided to ask the universe. I'm like, okay, this is my one last shot. I swear. Like, what more than anything in the world would I love to do? Even though I've been working years trying to figure that out.
Yep.
There's got to be one more thing. Like, what more than anything? Maybe I missed it somewhere along the way. Mm-hmm. I looked up to the sky, and before I could even really, get the question answered, and I remember distinctly I was living in a log home, and I went out on the beautiful porch and these beautiful woods around me. And I looked up to the sky that was so, so blue that day. What more than anything in the world do I want? And I saw this vision of portrait photography. I mean, I literally saw a frame, like a big wide frame. I saw some siblings sitting in it, posing. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I've always loved portrait photography. I love looking at pictures. I feel like, they paint 1,000 words, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not sure. I don't want to be a photographer. I mean,
right.
my dad had a dark room in our basement in the 70s, which was very cool. And that was his, so cool. Hobby. So I knew about it. I'd done it in art school and things like that, in my art classes, rather. I was like, I don't think I'm going to be a photographer, but universe, I'm going to take you seriously. And because I don't want to work anywhere else, like, what can we do with that?
Literally. You're like, okay, that's interesting, but like, what does it mean?
Right. Can you tell me? And you know what? I tell you what, I'm going to ride this message and let's figure it out.
Yeah.
So I started thinking about what I did and maybe some of the things that I'm good at or my zone of genius. And what I realized was I can feel people and I can kind of read what they're thinking sometimes even when we're in person. Sometimes the thoughts are screaming so loudly out of their head. I'm like nodding and they haven't even said anything yet.
Yeah.
But it started happening online and like on social media where I could see people talking or posting or, having pictures or content or anything like that. And I would see these women entrepreneurs doing that. And I could see, oh my gosh, that doesn't align with who they are at all. And I mean, that happens with me sometimes too. It's hard to kind of see yourself and what you're doing.
Totally.
But it was really easy for me to see with them. And all I wanted to do was just like hop through the screen, and to help them and be like, I can help you. I see what's going on here. I see this isn't really you or, all these things. So that's what helped me put all this together, because I was like, how could I tie in portrait photography with this, I see people, not I see dead people. I see people. And that is when it hit. I'm like, I love photo shoots. And I love those, I've seen yours actually. You've taken some really nice pictures for,
Thank you.
For like personal branding or branding photo
Thank
shoots.
you so much. Oh my gosh. I also enjoy it very much. Like, it's so fun.
I love it. I love looking at them, and I love when somebody's really, they've nailed it. They've really embodied who they are, what they, what their passion is for their business, how they help people, all of that just in one photo shoot. So I took everything that I already do in my business with the epiphany and the blueprint and some of the Pinterest work that I was doing, and decided that, what would happen if I took the photo shoot element, and I know who these people are already. I mean, we're weaving that identity thread already with them to who they are. So what if we make that into part of this personal branding package and make this photo shoot really represent them? Like it's not just a photo shoot you sign up with your photographer, but we've got the mental side of it. We've got the visual side of it. We've got the understanding of their business and clarity in what they're doing. Let's channel all of that into this really cool photo shoot.
Yeah.
That when it's done also attracts people to them. You almost don't even have to say anything. They just get it because it's all been infused into this one photo shoot.
Totally.
And I decided, go ahead.
I can see how that would be so powerful, especially because you've done all this work and it's almost like looking in the mirror again for the first time and actually like seeing yourself reflected in this new way that's demonstrative of all the change that you've gone through. And then, of course, like in perfect synchronicity with the rest of how the business works for you is that like it's two-pronged approach where you're like, yes, you're getting this like amazing mental, emotional, spiritual aspect out of it, but it's also going to really help you like build your business at the same time, which is magical to me.
It's really neat. They get to see themselves, in the beginning of the work from the inside. And then they get to see themselves from the outside. And it just gives them so much confidence to move forward into our last step, which is the bridge. And we work on some marketing tools to make sure that they're in a place that they really enjoy marketing themselves. And it just becomes this complete package that falls under my business name, House of Vision. So it's like, it's all under this big house, and they get to, leave all of that knowing who they are, what their business is, how to market themselves. It's like this rule book for how to run their life and business.
That's incredible. Especially for me, entrepreneurship is such a lesson in personal growth, in self-development, because, are a reflection of your business. I think it's so different from any other type of job out there where it is your values. It is you as the visionary. You're driving it forward. And if you are not in a good place, like your business is not going to be in a good place, you have to take the necessary steps to ensure that your mindset is where it needs to be on a consistent basis. So then that way you can perform as best as possible. And I think that especially for small businesses, as businesses grow and grow and grow into something that's way bigger than themselves, that's a different story. But if you have a small business with a small team, like you are the cornerstone and you're the center point for all of this. you need to really understand who you are because you're going to be consistently confronted with challenges. It's like, to me, being an entrepreneur is like X Games mode job level situation. Like it's a hard path to choose, and if you're equipped with the right tools, like you will succeed.
Absolutely. You're right. Yeah.
Well, Casey, this has been amazing. I have enjoyed every single minute of it,
Me
and
too. Me too.
I think that this can be a help for a lot of people, and I really genuinely hope that this encourages people to reach out to you because I think that you are able to help so many people through this process. And I really appreciate the time and your expertise today.
Thank you. I so appreciate the opportunity too. It's been wonderful. Thank you.